All right.
We're live.
Yes, we are.
Recorded live.
All right. It don't matter to me how we start. So
Should Run with Gas podcast.
Yep.
We are at Coolspring, Pennsylvania, the Coolspring Power Museum 2023. And we're sitting here with Wayne Grenning, one of our idols.
Yes. The presentation based guy.
Yeah. We're skid people, so
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
we had to step it up a little bit and talk with royalty.
Well, you're down here with a crew, though. So
Right? Wayne, the work you do is absolutely amazing. Tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us how you got started in this. Give us a story.
Well, I can give you the abbreviated story because it's
fine.
it's been an evolution, I guess.
Right.
So first started out in high school, and I used to go down to the county fair in Oneida County,
Right.
my hometown of Boonville, and I would go there with my friends. My friends would ride all the rides at the fair.
Right.
And I always went to the back of the place where the agricultural exhibit was.
Okay.
And looked at all the engines and the tractors and was mesmerized by the antique mechanical things.
Right.
So my friends did their thing on the rides, and I was back there, and that was the beginning of I guess where my interest came from in the
Right.
old machinery. So I started out fixing lawnmowers to make money, and I went to some of the local shows and bought engines, and it had evolved from buying Hercules like almost every other collector does. And,
Yep.
and again, with the mechanical things and the aptitude I had with it, I started making models.
Okay.
And I figured if I'm going to make the models, I might as well spend the time on the more interesting models.
Right.
It was way above my ability, but I struggled to grow into it to make some of the stuff I made.
So you were not, sorry to interrupt, you were not a machinist or anything, a tool maker?
No. My background is mechanical technology.
Okay.
So it's like a hands-on tech degree.
Right.
And,
So you taught yourself everything?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, I wasn't afraid to watch and learn, right?
Right.
So I find people I can mentor in and watch what they do, and it's like, hopefully learn from their mistakes.
Right.
I made plenty of my own, but...
Did you have any formal background training, formal training that you sought to get the skills you needed, or was it all just kind of the hanging out with knowledgeable people type deal?
Majority of it was hanging out.
Yeah.
My background was in industry, so I got exposed to a lot of things that were outside of the hobby world, and it's like it kind of gave me a reason to try to use some of those resources so I could tap into them to do things that I normally didn't have access to. And it's been an evolutional thing. It really has.
So you're pretty well known for doing some top-notch restorations. I guess how did that all start? I mean, where did somebody approach you and say, "Hey, I got this, and I like your work," or is it something you bought and then did and put out there, and then it kind of how did that all start?
I guess some of it was by chance.
Yeah.
The models I made were of some slide valve flame ignition models, as you know, and I could see a change in, not a huge change, but a slight change in the model world, where I've been going to the model shows since the early 90s.
Right.
And I think part of it had to do with the age group of the model people who were growing, and part of it was just me. I wanted to make very elaborate, complex models, and I didn't want to insult the people out there by selling stuff at a price that wasn't reasonable.
Right.
I had some people know I'd started a project making a 1/3 scale 5 horsepower Columbian Opera.
Okay.
And I got into it, and by the time I had the whole project developed, I realized what the cost was going to be to sell these things at, and it wasn't doable. So I kind of abandoned that, and then followed the interest into restoring some nicer stuff. There's an engine in the building here in the Susan Preston Foster building, a 10-horse Schleicher, and the owner saw the work I did in the models and some slide valve work, and said, "How would you like to work on a full-size engine?"
Right.
And I was honest. I said, this is back 15 years ago or so, and I said, that's outside my thing, but I don't mind learning.
Giving it a try, yeah.
I don't mind learning, so I'll give it my best. I'm not going to hurt the engine.
Right.
And along with that is I was never afraid to learn and do research, and I got involved in that. And I made trips to museums and went to libraries and stuff and got the information needed, and I was successful to get through the first restoration. It's every step is a building block.
Right,
for
sure.
What you get.
So we're in this Husong Foster building. What's your favorite engine in here? It's hard to narrow it down. It's hard to narrow it down. I know.
Well, be quite honest. There's an engine over here behind the corner. I don't know if the camera can see it, but it's an ex-Henry Ford Crosley piano bass that was sold at a de-ascension sale from their collection in the early 80s.
Right.
And it's pretty much lived its whole life here. It was across the roadway here in the John Wilcox building over there. It was there for probably 20-something years.
Right.
And they moved it over here when the building was built. I just did a mechanical, call it a freshening up on it.
Right.
And put one of your presentation bases under it.
Presentation base, yes. And for you, those that's listening and are watching or whatever, you can also follow Wayne's progress on it. He's got a Facebook page. Was it Grenning Models Workshop or?
Yeah, Grenning Models. Yeah.
He, I always ask is Wayne, how do you get so much done in so little time? I don't think you ever sleep, dude.
Yeah, Jonathan always gives me a hard time.
Right.
A vampire or something because
Right.
you're sleeping or awake at night. And, I don't know. I guess it's a passion.
Right.
Something you really enjoy doing. You find the time, make the time. There's a balance there, and you got to keep everybody at home happy too. And
right.
It's a moving target. So
yeah.
Been doing a lot of work on restoration work. We just finished the Crosley up and brought it back here last month. And, basically I'm going to lay low for a month or two and get things done around the house.
And then dive back in.
Then dive back in once you get some stuff set up. We took some time off, went to the Noonan show over in Europe 2 weeks ago.
Tell us a little bit about the Noonan show.
For those that haven't been to it,
That's in what, Germany?
It's in Holland.
Okay.
It's like southeast of Amsterdam, probably about 90 minutes or so, roughly. It's kind of the equivalent of a Coolspring in a way for what Europe is. It's known as the largest engine show in mainland Europe.
Okay.
It's different in Coolspring from the way that they don't have buildings.
Right.
Like here, it's just a field. But because it appeals to such a large group of collectors, some of the most amazing things comes there.
Right.
We had at this show, we had a Priestman oil engine made in 1882. They had a Clerk 2-cycle engine. Some of the other very early things and some special engines that came out of the German Technikum in Cologne that were on loan. So, and just the stuff that shows up in the field is unlike what we're used to seeing here.
Right.
So,
here in the States, we have a lot of what they call farm engines.
Right.
Hercules, Internationals, stuff like that. We do have some industrial engines. There's some Foos engines in here. There's
absolutely
the Elira over there. Those are more industrial.
Yep.
World War II kind of probably got rid of a lot of stuff.
I think the iron drives over there from scrap metal were much more aggressive.
Were they?
Than here. Yeah. So things that were fortunate enough to be saved over there, I think, were like stuck in basements or walled off so people wouldn't find them. And,
Yeah.
And,
or necessary for production for something because that was their only means of power.
Right.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Huh.
But it's different. I think that's part of what makes it interesting for people like myself is because it's not the same as here.
Right.
You get to see a different element, and the camaraderie over there with the collectors that go to that is unmatched. Not that it's bad here; it's wonderful here. But it's just different. I mean, you over there you'll go to the German, we'll call it the German tent, and they have a pig roast going. And they'll invite you over some German beer, and you're eating pulled pork sandwiches, and they got a pig in the roast being driven by a gas engine, and they go over to the French section, and they got cheeses and meats and breads and stuff, and in the years past they've had a chef over there that's cooking food for you and bring people. It's amazing.
Dang.
Sounds like an old World's Fair type atmosphere.
Right.
It's
We're
really
step
cool.
it up or something.
Yeah.
Geesh.
Yeah, it's an experience. I went over there with a friend of mine and Woody Sint for the first time. I think it was 15 years ago. My mindset was that this is a bucket list thing. It's a once in a lifetime. I'm probably never going to be able to recreate it.
Right.
And I remember sitting on the plane, flying home, saying, "I'll be back."
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there's an engine running in the background. You've probably been hearing it fire every once in a while. Tell us something about it. It's an auto? What is this thing, Wayne?
What is it? Okay, it's a copy of 1867 Otto Langen engine. It was the modern gas engine, let's say, runs on the Otto cycle.
Okay.
Before the Otto cycle the four-cycle engine was developed, Otto and Ergen Langen, German engineers, got together and they were trying to come up with something that would replace steam.
Okay.
And this was an early attempt to replace it. They made them from quarter horsepower up to 3 horsepower.
Right.
This is a half horsepower size.
Right.
And
so it's 1/2 of a horsepower.
1/2 of a horsepower. Yeah.
And it's huge.
It's 9 foot tall.
Yep. And then it's, let's say, 3,000 pounds, 2,500, 3,000 pounds. So it only runs right now. It's running a little slower than it would if it was running for a living, but they normally run about 120 RPM or so, 130 RPM. And they run on a hydrogen-based fuel.
Right. So hydrogen-based fuel mixed with what?
Originally, it was basically they heated coal in a vessel, and when the coal got really hot, it off-gassed into a gas, which some people call coal gas, some people call illuminating gas, which was mostly hydrogen, and it had some methane, carbon monoxide, and some other stuff in it. But it's the hydrogen component that's the magic sauce that makes flame ignition work.
Right.
And so they were originally run on coal gas. Here, we can either run on a blend of propane and hydrogen, or in this case, just straight hydrogen.
Right.
Now, did you come up with the blend to get that to run, or was that kind of something that already had been figured out?
Well, we knew what the components of aluminum gas were. Okay. So that wasn't a problem. So the key ingredients, there's many things in it, but the key ingredients were hydrogen and methane. So we blended it here and cheated and used propane and hydrogen. So some of the engines have to blend and run, like the green Sombart engine. I don't know if the camera can see it behind the Otto Langen. That works. That's a non-compressing engine also, and that's the way the ignition and the power stroke in that work. It has to have a blend of hydrogen and something. So we run a special gas on that.
Oh.
Being at these, that was so early on, and it was a new concept, like you said. It was trying to get away from steam.
Yes.
I guess what makes that cycle special? It's different from a 4-cycle.
Well, yeah, good question. Good question. Maybe the fundamental difference with the Otto Langen engine is they were afraid of using the power stroke for power, because some early engineers and development people had blown themselves up trying to do it, because all they had were steam engines. Steam engines couldn't take it. They weren't familiar with the fuels. So what they did in this case was they figured, well, we'll make an explosion in a cylinder. We won't do any work with it, but we'll trap the gas after the explosion, and then the hot trapped gases in the cylinder cool off. And when they do, it pulls the piston. So when you watch the engine running in the background, you'll see it fire, and the piston's attached to a long rack here and a guide. It'll drive up in the air, and the cylinder gets sealed off, and the gas is cool, and the atmospheric pressure pushes the piston back down. So it's the downward cooling stroke.
So the downward pull is the actual power stroke.
That's correct. What you would assume is the power stroke, but going up is nothing.
Yeah. So that's where trying to explain this thing to people that are listening. This thing is a vertical engine. The piston is on the bottom, connected to a long, we'll just say a connecting rod.
Rack.
Yep, a rack.
With gear teeth or whatever.
That's exactly what it is, a rack. When it fires, it goes straight up into the air, and the connection to the crank or the flywheel is ratcheting, correct?
It's a directional sprag clutch. People that are familiar with transmissions, a lot of times pull cords for lawnmowers and stuff.
Exactly.
They have a sprag clutch. It only engages in one direction.
So when the rack goes up, that sprag clutch...
It freewheels.
Yeah, it freewheels.
Yep.
And then, like you said, the gases cool down and then suck the piston back down in.
So
and
it
then
creates like a vacuum then.
Yes, exactly.
And then it pulls the sprag clutch engages and then
Drives the shaft.
Drives the shaft.
Yep. So you had a power stroke in the downward every cycle. And the governor just controlled how often it happened depending on the speed of the engine.
Right.
So super inefficient for everything that's going on.
Well, it's at the end of the day it was quite efficient, not compared to a modern four-cycle engine.
Okay.
But the problem is the power-to-weight ratio is terrible.
Yeah,
Right.
I guess that's what I mean. And,
Yeah.
for everything that you're getting and only getting a half horse.
They have you 3,000 pounds for a half
Yeah,
horsepower.
and the amount of time that would take to build the thing, with the technology they had back then.
And when they built these, they made them from a quarter horsepower, which is about half the size of that,
Okay.
all the way up to 3 horse was the maximum size. And the 3 horse had almost a 17-inch diameter piston in it. So
Wow.
and when it fired and shot that assembly upward, the recoil force is down. And it even gave warnings in the manual for this that they couldn't be on the second floor of a building. It would
No
break the building.
So are there any of those that exist?
There are some, but they had to put it on the ground floor of the building. It had to be in a foundation.
They still exist to this day.
There's one 3 horse that I'm aware of, and
No kidding.
and they were made by several companies. They were made by a company in England, Crosser Brothers. That's
Right.
how they got started in the engine business. Deutz in Germany, which is the most common known one, and a couple others. There was a small company in Belgium and whatnot, but about 5,000 were made total between all the corporations, and I think roughly 33 of them or so survive today.
Right. 33 engines
Total.
in the world.
In the world, around the world, yeah.
Wow. And the one that's running behind us, you built this one.
Yes, this was a reproduction,
Okay.
full-size reproduction of a half horse. I modeled it after the engine that Otto took, the very first one he made, to the World's Fair in Paris in 1867.
1867.
It won the World's Fair for efficiency.
Really?
Yep.
That is
They got a gold medal for it. There were other manufacturers. Lenoir was a French engine.
Okay.
They had 5 engines at the World's Fair.
Right.
Hugon had some engines there, and there were a couple other small ones. But the people that were judging the engine for a fuel efficiency for the exposition contested it. They said, "This is possible. There's no way this engine can be as good as it is." So they made Otto take the engine apart, pull the bottom off, make sure there were no springs and levers or hidden
Right.
stuff, and and then
So it's kind of like a Ford versus Ferrari type of thing,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
in
you got it.
1867.
Yep, you got it.
I'll be
That's
darned.
awesome.
So the recognition they got off that just rocketed the business. And,
Right.
And it wasn't until 10 years later when the fourth cycle came out
Right.
that the next evolution in the engine took place.
Wow.
So when you scaled that up, do those engines scale up, from the smallest one to the large? Is it scaled, or did they make changes? I'm sure they had to.
Okay, does it just look like you blew up the picture
Yes.
for a bit?
Yeah.
To some extent, yeah. Some of the parts had to be more robust.
Okay.
The clutch on a 3 horsepower was enormous. The rack gears were very big. But really, if you look at a picture of a quarter horsepower engine and blew it up and put it beside a 3 horsepower, they look very similar.
Okay.
It's a good place.
And what was your process to do that, to do the scaling up? I mean, obviously you sat there and measured and...
Oh, for this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was pretty
interesting
intense.
story. It was. There's very, very good drawings of these engines, but it's not quite good enough to make
Right.
a legitimate reproduction.
Well, the Germans were pretty good about keeping records.
They were.
So
They were. And there were a couple mysteries
maybe a little
inside
too
of
good
it.
at times.
Unlike Hillary Clinton. At least it wasn't in an email or nothing.
So I knew I needed more information. So an interesting story there. I contacted the Deutz Corporation over in Germany.
Okay.
And I said I'd like to look at your original engine and to get some drawings, maybe take some parts off it. And they were not very receptive to that.
Really?
No. And again, with the Noonan show and my connections over there before I went there, they put me in contact with someone, and it still took 2 years of begging
Really?
to go there, and I was kind of relentless with it because I was driven to do this,
Right.
and I think they just finally said okay just to shut me up. Because, I wasn't going to stop,
Right.
and I tried to be legitimate about it. But
So you flew over there.
flew over there, and the guy said, you have like 4 or 5 hours, and then you're done. Go away, and we don't want to hear from you anymore.
Really?
But that was the opinion I had in the beginning, but I got a good relationship with the museum. I mean, once they realized that what I was doing was a legitimate thing, I wasn't just someone who wanted to take their engine apart.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. After you did it and completed it, I mean, I'm sure they were more accepting as to that you weren't some Joe Schmo that.
No, and the key collectors that put together and organized the Noonan organization are also friends and active members of the museum that the original Otto Langen is in.
Right.
So it really developed into a great thing.
So when you say Deutz, it's still like the same Deutz that we have over here that bought Agco out or owns part of Agco. It's the same Deutz Corporation.
Deutz Corporation that makes tractors and diesel air-cooled diesel engines and all. Yeah, they are the oldest internal combustion engine company in the world.
It's amazing.
They started made the first engines, and they're still in business today. So
wow, unbelievable.
Their museum over there you have to make an appointment to get in, and they don't give frequent tours, but they have one of the most significant collections of engines in the world. Unfortunately, it's a private museum, so
you kind of have to know somebody to get in there.
You got to know somebody. On their webpage over there, they've got a link you can click on to schedule a tour, and they do it in groups over 10. So.
Right. Okay.
But it's amazing stuff that's not seen anywhere else in the world.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
They have a running Brayton engine, the only running Brayton. They got a Clork engine that runs.
Right. Now there's a thing called a Brayton cycle.
Brayton cycle. Yep.
Explain that versus 4-stroke, 2-stroke.
Okay.
If you don't care.
No. It's the Brayton cycle is what basically happens is you got your regular engine cylinder, and you have a compressor.
Okay.
And in between the two is what's called a combustor.
Yep.
So in a combustor, you have fuel introduced to it,
okay,
and the compressed air goes into the combustor. And as it goes in the combustor, it expands.
Okay.
And it expands and then pushes the power piston.
Okay.
So they call it a constant pressure cycle. So it's different than a regular internal combustion engine.
Okay.
Jet engines today work on what we kind of loosely call a Brayton cycle engine.
Really?
It's a continuous pressure being fed from a combustion event, driven by a compressor and a fuel source. So it's even though it has a piston and you have one power pulse per revolution, the combustion process is continuous.
I'll be darned.
And so of all of them they made, there were, I think there's 4 or 5 originals in existence, and the one in the museum in Germany is only running one.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. Fully operational.
Yep. Cool.
Wow.
Yep.
You had wrote a book. It's called Flame Ignition, about flame ignition engines.
Yes.
It's a great book. I think you can get copies here at Coolspring.
Yeah,
you can get them on the Coolspring website, coolspringpowermuseum.org. Did you just want to share your thoughts and your processes with that, or the history of it, or?
I'm sure you had a lot of research that you.
It's a pretty thick book.
It was. It's a lot of information. It goes back to my passion of engine history and design, and doing a lot of the work I've done on restorations and building models. The information isn't all in one spot, so you got to do a lot of digging. And as time went on, I realized I had more information than I really thought. I had filing cabinets full of stuff.
Right.
Pretty big library of original books.
You wanted to compile it into one source?
Yeah, I just wanted to share it. It didn't make much sense to have it for myself.
Yeah. Right.
And I worked with a lot of people. It wasn't just myself, but Alex is here from Alman, and he's been on the show yesterday and today, and he helped me out a lot with some of the photo work and editing of the photos for it. I work with collectors over here and across the ocean extensively to make sure the information was right and fact check it.
Right.
The English Patent Office, the United States Patent Office, I wanted to try to tell the whole story of the early stuff that predates most of the type of engines that you see in shows today. And
I think people take it for granted that we have 4-cycle and 2-cycle now, and it's been around for so long that people today don't give it much thought. They're like, this has always been here. This is just always what it was, and that's not the case. It's like anything else. There's trial and error, and there was multiple different ways to get to where we got to the 4-cycle and a 2-cycle.
I got one of the books in my library. It's called Allen's Patent Digest of Internal Combustion Engines.
Okay.
It has some hot air, but it's mostly internal combustion engines, and it just goes to the engine patents up to 1907. There's 3,000 pages of patents
Really?
just for internal combustion engines. So everything was a different variation, whether it was a different type of igniter
Right.
or a slide valve or an oil engine or a diesel engine. It was incredible, the amount of development.
So they were
that-
experimenting with all kinds of stuff then, and just trying to figure it out. A different.
Yep. And as anything develops, it's the best cycle, the best widget wins.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Well,
you
it's
have
kind
all
of like what we're doing today with, they're trying to do with electric vehicles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They were doing the same thing back then with
Yes.
gas, hydrogen.
Yep. And everybody knew it was the way to go.
Right.
Everybody knew it was the way to go. So
What other, we obviously know hydrogen has always been something that has been tried to be used as an ignition source. Gasoline seemed to want out and diesel seemed to want out. What else were they experimenting with? Coal gas, obviously.
coal gas was the biggest because it was available in every city.
Yeah.
Gas lights in the 1800s, late 1800s, were all coal gas. Majority of them. And so that gas was available for people to plug their engines into the gas network to run their engines. So that really steered the ship up till, in this country, to about 1900. It's funny, it didn't change over completely in England until the 1960s. Excuse me.
Really?
Yeah, when they were able to get natural gas out of the North Sea.
Right.
So it was that late, but not. Slide valves obviously got obsoleted.
Right.
But to answer your question, I mean, there's patents on gunpowder engines. There's all kinds of, they tried out all kinds of crazy ideas. And a good deal of it was it's just trial and error.
Yeah.
And a lot of the patented ideas were useless. You look at them today and it's like, how did that ever work? And maybe it didn't.
That's unbelievable.
Well, something else, and something I want to try. I want to make a wood gas generator and get an engine to run off of wood gas, and I think that would be interesting.
It's the interesting thing is during World War II, almost all of the countries in mainland Europe had to do that.
So I've seen all
the petroleum was
I've seen a lot of vehicles from the 40s in that era.
They had a trailer behind it.
They had a trailer, early
Right.
pickups had them on the bed. There was a video on YouTube I watched of a guy that he was in his 70s, and it was his father's truck, and he had restored it overseas, in Europe, and he was talking about the truck, and he still ran on wood gas, and I can't remember black elder or alder, the tree. He was, he can remember his dad saying that was the best tree to put in there for it to gas, and that's what they ran on. Because that's what I've always run it on, and it was a fully restored truck, and he drove it around, and he had the generator in the back. And ever since I watched that video, I knew what it was, but ever since I watched that video, I'm like, okay, if we can power a truck to get I want to do like a large, maybe like an oil field or something I have, a large oil field engine to make a wood gas generator and to get it run off of it and whatever that process may be.
It's very doable.
Yeah.
The hardest part with that whole process is you got to scrub the gas.
Okay.
Because there's all kinds of ash and moisture and dirt things you have to get out because you don't want that going through the engine.
Yeah.
But it's very doable. They did it. They had wood gas engines back in the 1800s.
Okay.
And again, it's a methane and hydrogen you're extracting out of the.
So that's what is actually burning.
Yes.
Okay.
The same thing whether you're doing it with coal or with that, but it's different ratios. But same thing.
So
And carbon monoxide, that's the other one that's big.
So with coal and coal gas, the process, you say it's heating it up and getting the gases to come out of it. After that process, is the coal useless or is it still burnable?
That's a good question. I don't really have the answer to that. I'm not sure if they can get coke out of what's left or
Right.
a lot. There's something they can do with what's remaining, but I'm the wrong guy for that.
Okay. Well, it just seems to me, if you're using coal and getting the gas from it, it seems to me that there would be another
Byproduct or something.
you'd have a byproduct that is still useful.
I'm sure there is.
Well, if you're using coal, why not just make steam with it? And
Right.
I don't know. Might have to do some research.
Google it.
Google it. But but again, it was just a different way of using coal.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, even in the early 1900s, nothing could replace the mass power of steam.
Right.
Steam was king.
Right.
But,
Oh, yeah.
But for small applications, small businesses, portable applications.
Right.
And to some point, it still is in industrial applications. Steam is.
Look, large power generating plants,
Yeah.
whether it's
It's
nuclear
still-
or whether it's coal
still.
or
That's it. That's exactly right. A nuclear plant is it's a steam plant.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your fuel source is just,
a nuclear reactor,
Yeah.
from The Simpsons or something. Grab you a donut and hit some buttons.
You can see things are changing now when we get there. But you got a lot of different alternate energy methods now, and it'll be an evolution. It'll take years for it to see full circle. But
what do you think would be the next? Like, where do you think the direction in propulsion or whatever is?
my
Opinion only.
opinion only. In my opinion of Wayne Grenning, I don't see hydrogen being a viable fuel for personal vehicles. Because basically in its raw form, it can be stored two ways: either highly compressed gas,
Right.
which I don't know that you need all your vehicles with highly compressed hydrogen gas in them if you get in an accident.
Bombs on wheels.
Well,
Yeah.
it has potential for problems. And the other one is liquid. Liquid's cryogenic, and you can't contain it forever in the liquid form. So after it sits in the tank, it builds up pressure in its vents. So neither of these two things do you really want in your garage.
Right.
Yeah.
Even some of the questions with batteries, like from some of the battery cars you see in parked in the garage. I mean, it has to evolve until it's. But I don't see the hydrogen part for a personal vehicle.
So the
getting
storage
there.
is the issue with hydrogen.
Storage is an issue. I see it, and with my background in my business, I see hydrogen becoming much more commonplace in trucks,
Right.
tractor trailers, down the road.
Right.
And
Because they're using compressed natural gas now.
Right.
The CNG.
that's correct.
So-
So with rail, I see it happening. I don't see it happening in aircraft because it's the weight of the tank.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't come over because the liquid form you need cryogenic dewars and insulated stainless tanks, and in compressed form you need really strong tanks to hold the compressed gas. So I don't see it being practical in air travel, but I think for rail, I think for garbage trucks, small straight trucks, things of that
Right.
sort, I think you're going to see it expand. There's some huge efforts being in place right now in this country with monstrous solar arrays, working electrolysis beds for making hydrogen, and it's for transportation, large transportation.
And this is stuff you don't hear about because nobody really thinks about it.
No. And again, it's evolving. It's not refined. It's not perfected,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's. I think that's probably the next step.
Right. So, what's your next project? I mean, you got anything lined up? I mean, we've seen you on your Facebook page. They're working on Louis, 1876.
1876. Yeah, it's a 1 horsepower Otto Langen engine.
Okay.
That was built in April of 1876. John Trebner and myself were able to get our hands on this engine. And interesting is after we bought it, we realized it was a gasoline-fueled Otto Langen.
Okay.
Only a couple were made, and it's the only one surviving of that type. So, again, going back to research and all that, there's a tremendous amount of effort trying to do the proper restoration on it and reproduce the fuel system. So the main fuel system is a vaporizing gasoline carburetor.
So it uses just the gasoline vapor, like basically add air pressure to gasoline, and
Yep. And then the air is added to the gas by the suction stroke of the engine. It actually pulls the vacuum in, we'll call the carburetor, and bubbles air through the
Really?
gasoline. The air picks up the volatiles in
Right.
the gasoline, and that air that goes into the engine is laden with gas vapors, and it's explosive.
right.
So,
We take the Venturi for granted.
Yeah, or the injector.
yeah,
Or an injector.
in essence, it does the same thing, just the hard way.
Yeah,
and
right.
you need a 400-pound vessel to do it
Right.
with this engine. But so that's an interesting project. The engine was in pretty bad shape. It was neglected. It came out of the National Museum of Transportation in St. Louis.
Okay.
That engine was actually, if you want to hear a little history on it, I
Right.
don't know.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
we know where it was sold. It was sold through a distributor in Munich.
Okay.
And the distributor actually put an advertisement in the local paper when they got the engine and said, "We have a gasoline-fueled Otto Langen." It was a big thing at the time. And they sold it to a customer. And there's a little history there we don't know, but then the Ohio State University
Okay.
sent a professor over to Germany and brought the thing back on a field trip over there.
Okay.
And they
Ohio State,
yep, right in Columbus. And they put it in their museum.
Okay.
And supposedly it was run for special occasion for students and people touring the college. And as things go on, there's appreciation for antiques and stuff diminishes, and they had an incident with it. They dropped it over and severely damaged the engine.
Right.
And they didn't want it anymore. And best I can understand, it got pushed out in the parking lot behind the building where it sat for a long time. And a scrap dealer, a wannabe museum owner from St. Louis by the name of Hendrick bought it. And Heinrich, excuse me. And he had it in his collection, and it wasn't ever on display.
Right.
It was just, in the back corner of a storage building. And he had passed, and the museum totally didn't have interest in it because there were transportation.
Right.
Planes, trains, automobiles, and things that move, and this
Absolutely.
was strictly stationary. Well, it ended up in a munitions bunker on the west side of St. Louis.
Oh, boy.
In a defunct U.S. government munitions bunker in an unheated building. It stayed there for many, many, many
I'm
years.
sure it got worse there.
Yeah, it really did. Unfortunately, they couldn't have put it in a worse spot. They parked it under a seam where two buildings adjoined, and it literally just poured water inside the cylinder board for 30 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so we had our issues with it. We were able to get the thing.
Still savable. I mean, you're saving it. You're bringing it back to life.
You can't let something that significant be unsavable.
That's a huge thing in the world, in a global aspect of internal combustion. I mean, it's huge.
Well, the engine itself?
Oh, yeah.
Well, if you look at the Deutz engines, for example, the next oldest carbureted Deutz engine is 10 years later.
Okay.
So this is even 10 years before it. So, but it represents a very interesting thing because Maybach designed this carburetor himself based off of some other research that was done in Europe and applied it to this engine. It was a big thing, but then ironically what happened was when Deutz approved the marketing of this engine, they had come out with the four-cycle engine at exactly the same time.
Yeah.
And the four-cycle that's king.
It just took off
it's
and went.
king.
Yeah.
So they had
So it was doomed from the start.
it was doomed. It could never get wheels and move.
Yeah.
I mean, even though it was really significant, it got totally eclipsed, which it should have been.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The four-cycle is just so, still today, it's king.
Yeah.
Whether it's
So
diesel
you guys are
or-
working on that project, working on getting pieces and parts and made.
Yeah,
and,
it's been a big effort. We've had the engine for almost a year and a half now, and putting a good plan together on how to approach it and everything. We've got all the mechanical damage done to it, repaired, and the parts that are missing we've got in progress.
I remember the day you guys brought that thing home. It was a big secret. There was a tarp over top of it, and somebody put a picture, undisclosed location, getting some gas.
Was it the gas station near your
I know
place?
exactly where that's at. I said, you were a quarter mile away from our shop. I said, what's the chance? I could have drove by and seen this thing.
Yeah.
So
that was funny.
That was a great time because I'm looking at the background like, well, hell, I know exactly where they're at.
Right around the corner. That's so funny.
Yeah, I mean, literally around the corner from us. We go by it all the time.
Yeah.
But
that was interesting.
Yeah. Well, working on that, and then anything.
Yeah, I've got
anything you want to do.
Oh, there's always stuff I want to do.
Right.
Always stuff. I have dreams, and
I was going to say that was a question I was going to ask earlier. What is there that's out there that you would like to get your hands on? Like, I'm sure there's multiples. But
well, I think for me personally, I think there's an engine called the Martini engine.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
It's in a collection in Europe. It stands alone by the way it looks. The engine's mounted on two pedestals. One pedestal is the air intake. One pedestal is the exhaust. Side-mounted slide valve. It's got a gigantic flyball governor on the thing, and it just has curves and lines of something that's really unique. It's really a special piece.
I think there's a YouTube video on it somewhere of it running.
Yep. Yeah. Then it was at the
Shelby.
The Noonan Flame Ignition Expo back in back in 2013.
Okay. I just received a book on the Cook Motor Company, Delaware, Ohio. Happen to have one of those. But yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Martini, I got sidetracked.
you didn't see what was going on there, did you?
No, I didn't. Was Brian trying to do something?
We were about to get a full moon.
Oh boy!
I don't think you realized that there was a camera behind it.
They'll block his ass at the border is what they'll do. Wayne, we appreciate you sitting down and talking to us. we encourage our listeners and our viewers to check out the Coolspring Power Museum in Coolspring, Pennsylvania.
Great place.
It's my favorite place ever to go. I mean,
I call it engine mecca. I mean,
it is. I mean, you'll see stuff here you'll never see anywhere else.
yeah.
It's one of those things you come to, and I think majority of people get bit, and they're
Absolutely.
they're here forever. Yeah.
Check it out,
Likewise.
coolspringpowermuseum.org. They got their events page on there. They have pictures and such, and then come join us. But, we appreciate you sitting down for a little bit here, talking with us.
It's been wonderful. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We've learned a lot. We've been looking
Yeah.
forward to this.
I know we could continue talking for.
Oh,
hours.
yeah, absolutely. But we all kind of want to look around at
Yeah.
things and visit with other people.
For
but
sure. For sure.
Wayne Grenning, hey, we appreciate you, and we'll talk to you
so
soon.
much. Thank you very much.
And thanks to our listeners for tuning in, and we're going to do a little mini series here while we're at Coolspring.
It's a great opportunity to
Yeah.
get a lot of different.
There's
people.
so many interesting people here that are substantial in the hobby.
It's a great organization. And there's so many volunteers that it's a big complex place.
Yeah.
There's people that don't know it. You've got different buildings, and each building is kind of its own little
World.
right?
Yeah.
You have oil fields, you have industrial, you've got big commercial stuff on the hill, you've got old technology here, and you have a flea market full of stuff for people that want to shop around.
So they basically cover from 1876 to, I think there's engines here from the 90s.
Yeah.
So it covers well over 100 years.
Well, and you know that the Chris Austin Modern Diesel Building.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
Yes. That's going to be something to see when that's done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that one.
That's going to be something.
All right. Hey, we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well,
Thanks so much.
41 minutes. That was pretty good. So,
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Check out our other
Or listening.
podcasts, other videos on YouTube and Spotify. And until next time, go get your hands dirty.
Right.